Hey, it's Matt Kramzoff. Welcome back to the channel. So today we've got 4 must-read psychology books that most people have never heard of. And whenever I discover a book that's been out for years and I'm just discovering it, like I'm way late to the party, part of me is grateful for the recommendation. Like I love hearing about great new books, but then part of me is like, man, this came out years ago. I'm just hearing about this now. So 2 of the books that I'm going to share today came out relatively recently. So it's entirely possible that you've never heard of them just because, they haven't really been out that long. Unless it's a really big release, it takes a while for everyone to hear about them. However, number 3 on today's list came out in 1955, and it basically changed my view of everything, even though I read it in like 2014 or 2015. First up on the list, however, is one of my favorite books from one of my favorite humans, Ernest Becker. Now, the first book that most people have never heard of is called The Birth and Death of Meaning by Ernest Becker. Now, Ernest Becker is best known for his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Denial of Death, where he showed that one of the biggest motivators of human behavior is the subconscious fear of death. Basically, human beings are afraid to die, so they, or we, try to leave legacies, amass fortunes, and, quote, make a dent in the universe. I mentioned that he was one of my favorite human beings ever, and I am not alone in this opinion. One time in the 1960s, thousands of his students got together and offered to pay his salary when the University of California, Berkeley, threatened to remove him as a lecturer. Unfortunately, their petition didn't succeed, but it shows you a little bit about how much he was loved by his students. The Birth and Death of Meaning covers a lot of ground, but it mostly deals with how human beings collaborate in constructing meaning. He shows that our social context, i.e. society, is made up of a multiplicity of selves or egos who all want different things and who continue playing the game, so to speak, so that we can all get what we need from each other. This is a fascinating book written by a beautiful human being who cared deeply about our world and who hated to see it being torn apart by conflict and brought down by sorrow. If you're looking to understand human nature more intimately, I highly recommend this book. And one direct quote that I want to share with you from this book is, "When people do not have self-esteem, they cannot act, they break down." The second book on the list is Transcend by Scott Barry Kaufman. This is probably the most uplifting book on this list, and Scott Barry Kaufman does an excellent job of extending Abraham Maslow's ideas from nearly 70 years ago to show how human beings can move even beyond self-actualization and create a more humane and comforting society for every single one of us. You may be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, although, fun fact, Maslow himself never actually put them into a pyramid. But Kaufman shows how, towards the end of his life, Maslow was working on the next stage of his vision of human development. The next stage is transcendence, where we realize that our own personal well-being is intimately tied up with the well-being of every single other person alive on Earth. It's a powerful idea. One of the most interesting parts of Transcend I'll also mention briefly is Kaufman's list of the 13 sources of well-being. They are more positive emotions, obviously, fewer negative emotions, life satisfaction, vitality, environmental mastery, positive relationships, self-acceptance, mastery, autonomy, personal growth, engagement in life, purpose and meaning in life, and what he calls transcendent experiences. And one of my favorite quotes from Transcend is from Abraham Maslow himself when he says, "I think of the self-actualizing man not as an ordinary man with something added, but rather as the ordinary man with nothing taken away." The third book is The Sane Society by Erich Fromm. Now, Erich Fromm changed my entire life when I first read The Sane Society. Same with The Art of Loving, actually, where he says that love is the only rational answer to the problem of human existence. Amazing. In this book, he shows why it's really no measure of sanity to be considered well-adjusted while living in an insane society. Fromm also explains how we're removed from the sources of genuine well-being we need in order to live full human lives. When mere conformity is seen as mental health, we're blinded to just how crazy parts of our society really are. Fromm never lived to see Facebook replace many of our in-person interactions, but he was keenly aware of how the latest technologies allowed modern militaries to kill real people thousands of miles away just by pushing a button. Depending on your politics, you may not agree with some of his potential solutions, but hardly anyone formulates the problems as well as Fromm does. And one of my favorite quotes from that book is from Erich Fromm himself when he says, "Who will tell whether one happy moment of love or the joy of breathing on a bright morning and smelling the fresh air is not worth all the suffering and effort which life implies?" And the fourth book on our list is a much happier book than the last one. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And there's so much common sense in here and some not so common sense. It's actually just an essential personal finance book. So what Morgan Housel teaches is that knowing what to do doesn't really teach us anything about what happens in our heads when we actually try to do it. We all know that we should be saving for retirement, getting out of debt, following a budget, and yet when it comes to actually doing those things, our plans often fall apart. That's true because our feelings and emotions get involved when we deal with money. It's kind of like what physicist Richard Feynman said when he wondered aloud about how much more difficult physics would be if electrons had feelings. The best thing about The Psychology of Money is the friendly, convivial tone of Morgan Housel, the author, as he teaches us everything that he's learned about how to master our own psychology when it comes to money and spending. A quote from the book that I quite like is, "Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money." Of course, there are hundreds of books that I could have added to this list, and what's really terrifying is that I might not actually have ever heard of some absolutely must-read psychology books. So let me know if there's one that you think is a must-read psychology book that's not on this list, which is very possible because it's 4 books out of potentially hundreds or thousands. But I hope at least one of these kind of stirred up some curiosity, and the cure for boredom is curiosity. But unfortunately, as they say, there is no cure for curiosity. And as you may have heard, for every new subscriber to the channel, what I do is I donate $1 to the charity First Book. And what they do is they supply books to children who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them. So we're giving books to children who want to read but otherwise can't. So definitely support me in that. And also make sure you're signed up for the book giveaway. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel and sign up to my email list. So the video description has all the details, but it's super simple. At the end of every month, I pick one of my subscribers at random and I buy them a book of their choice. So I'll drop the discussion right here, but I will see you on the next video. Cheers.
I don't waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating. Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable.